flippin' said no to dinner with Scarlett Johansson because I promised my mate I'd babysit for him.
Do you think you chose acting, or do you think acting happened to choose you?
I think I chose acting.
Fresh Meat, The Crown on Netflix, Under the Vines, The Gone on TVNZ.
You're hiring me in a series of 10 films!
But 5 are definitely going to be cut.
Mannerisms of a character will stay with me for a little while, and sometimes they stay with me for years. You have very little control. I think if you can gear your mind to accepting that, can be really freeing. 90% of the people you see for a role absolutely can play that role. Casting directors and producers get together and try and fit the puzzle pieces together. So when you get the no's, it doesn't mean you're a bad actor, it doesn't mean you're a bad performer. More often than not, it's just a different puzzle piece needed. Finding satisfaction in your own work, you really need to find that within yourself. Art is so subjective. If you're looking for outside validation, that can be a really dangerous game to play.
What is your biggest fear?
Living to regret anything.
Kia ora and welcome to Where Creatives Connect. My name is Jamie Sharp and this is the podcast that brings you creatives and artists from literally all over the world, whether they be actors, musicians, directors, you name it, I get them on. And my job is to dive into the behind the scenes of their lives, their creative processes, and really what makes them who they exactly are. I'm joined today by a lovely human who reminds me every time I see her of how to look for the good in people and seems to have an abundance of joy and love to give no matter what the situation. If you have a TV or a laptop, you might recognize her face from a few films, a few TV shows, things like Fresh Meat, things like The Crown on Netflix, most recently Under the Vines and The Gone on TVNZ, which I believe is going to be released in Ireland in the next few weeks, is that?
Yeah.
Akushla, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having
You're
me.
very
That's such a
welcome.
lovely intro.
How are you? How is life treating you at the moment?
I mean, look at where we are.
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, can't be mad when this is the day, that's for sure.
Imagine this for me.
Mhm.
We're walking out of Q Theatre last night
Yes,
and I help you into an Uber.
yes you do.
Not that she can't get into an Uber on her own, she's got a bad knee. And the Uber driver asks you what you do for a living.
Yeah.
What do you tell them?
That's a great question. Sometimes I'm very honest and I'll just say I'm an actor, but you kind of have to expect the inevitable conversation to follow. Oh, what have I seen you in? All of those questions that follow. And if I'm feeling like I have the energy for that, then love that convo.
Yeah.
If not, I'll just say I'm a freelancer and I'll leave it at that. Oh, what industry do you work in? Oh, nothing important, or I'll just sort of steer the conversation away. How's your day been?
Yeah.
Has it been busy? The weather? That kind of thing.
I'm with you. Do you think you chose acting, or do you think acting happened to choose you?
I think I chose acting.
Mm.
Yeah. I think most, not all, I think most actors, it's an active choice because it's the nature of the industry can be so fickle and difficult to stay in. I think you can fall into it, absolutely, but to stay into it, I think has to absolutely be a choice for 99% of actors out there.
And was there a particular moment that you remember deciding, or was it past any particular time?
There are sort of two moments of choice that I can think of specifically when it comes to my career and as an actor. The first one was when I was in musical. Most people know Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I thought I wanted to be a singer. I was in the children's choir, and I realized standing on the stage during the show, it was actually the stage that I loved. It was being on stage, whether that was in a singing capacity, acting capacity. And I thought, okay, I want to do this. I want to be an actor. And then the sort of second choice that I made was when I finished at university. And I studied business at university. I have 2 business degrees, one in tourism and one in marketing and HR. And at the end of those degrees, I had continued acting alongside my degrees, and I'd started earning money from it. And I distinctly remember sitting down with one of my sisters saying, I'm going to give this a year. I'm going to give this acting thing a year. I won't get any other jobs and just see what happens. See if I can make something of that. And that would have been the very beginning of 2014, I think.
Okay.
So it's been, about almost 10 years of that 1 year experiment.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that a lot. The most recent thing you've been a part of in terms of TV
Mm-hmm.
is The Gone. To our listeners that haven't watched it yet, and I binged an episode and a half last night.
You
Yeah, I was very
did.
excited to see your face on there. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you explain in a couple of sentences what The Gone is about?
Yeah, so The Gone is a New Zealand Irish co-production. So the main story is two Irish tourists go missing, and Detective Sergeant Diana Huia has to return to Mount Affinity, her fictional hometown, which she hasn't been home to for a long time, to help solve the case. An Irish detective comes over to help as well. And then it all takes a lot of dark twists and turns, and is possibly also muddied up in some old historical murders as well.
I did
Yeah.
have to check if Mount Affinity was real or not.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, it ain't.
It's not real,
No.
but the beautiful Te Aroha stood in for Mount Affinity, and that town is real and is gorgeous and has a lovely place in my heart.
There's some beautiful shots in the first episode alone, like the rock climbing one just before you enter, where it zooms over Auckland, I guess it is. It's got the Sky Tower in the background. So straight away, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw some things at you now.
Do it. Don't throw it too hard.
I'll try my best. Deborah Brewer.
Yes.
Who is she, and how did she help you prepare for your role?
So Deborah Brewer works as a detective here in Auckland. Well, she was at the time. I believe she was moving into a new role, and someone else I knew was stepping into her role. And she is a Māori detective and spent some time with me to help me understand the sort of psychology of both being a woman in the police force, but also being a Māori person in that job and in that industry. And so, yeah, she just kind of talked me through what her experience had been sort of coming through the ranks. And that both what she was saying and how she was saying it was really interesting. So the content of what she was saying was so juicy and useful when it came to sort of the research towards, because I don't know what it's like to be a detective. I've got no idea. So having her alongside was great, but also the way that she was saying it and the way she conducted herself as a woman, as someone who was Māori in that industry, watching her tone of voice, how she took emotion out of things that I would inherently find emotional as someone who's never had to consider how they're emotional. Or if anything, it's the opposite. I consider how I connect emotionally to things and try and up that as an actor, whereas it was almost at times she was doing the absolute opposite. Yeah.
Interesting.
Lovely lady. And then her husband, Steve, he actually helped the writers when it came to the nitty-gritty details of how investigations would be conducted and that kind of thing. So it was lovely having both of them on board.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is that the first time you, as an actor, have taken real-world humans into your characters, or have you ever interviewed or spoken to people before?
I guess formally, yes. It's the first time I've formally done it. But I am such a stalker. And more often than not, I would say, probably 100% of the characters I've played, I always find, as a way to get into them, I'll find someone that I know or someone that I don't know who I've seen on TV or read about. I'll find a person and use them as my foundation, and then I'll colour from there. Formally, it's the first time that I've actually spoken to someone about a role and whatnot. And then very quickly afterwards, I did a play called Prima Facie, where I played a lawyer, a defense barrister, and amazingly got the opportunity to speak with a lawyer to do sort of research for that role as well. So formally done it twice, informally every time.
Do you think it's something you'll bring into your future work?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It was invaluable. I couldn't have brought the truth and authenticity to either of those roles were it not for speaking to someone who has that genuine, true lived experience.
Yo, just a quick one from me. Firstly, thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying it or you find any value in it at all, please take 4 seconds and hit the subscribe button on YouTube. I had a look last night and we had about 1,500 listeners last week. Amazing, but only 11.1 of you have hit that subscribe button. The more people that hit the subscribe button, the more I can share it, the more eyes I can get on the podcast, and the more I can grow it to be something that you want to listen to. Take 4 seconds, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. I really appreciate it. On with the podcast. One of the key themes I've picked up from The Gone so far is a sense of family. And you are from a rather large family.
I am.
You're a third of a triplet, of a triplet set.
A third of a set, yeah.
Third of a set.
Yeah.
And
one whole person, but a third of a set.
And do you have 8 other siblings?
Yes. Yeah.
It's quite a large family.
Yeah.
When you were growing up, what was the creative vibe or outlook like? Were you all involved in theatre growing up? Or how did it look?
So just for context's sake, one of 9, but we didn't grow up in the same household. So you get different configurations depending on which parents were there and whatnot. For my triplet sisters and I, theatre and performance, acting, drama came into our lives as a way of building confidence and socializing. So as triplets, we came with built-in friends. So when it came to making friends, not to say we didn't have any, but we'd have like 1 or 2. And if we went out in public, we were always those kids sort of holding onto our parents' legs, not wanting to talk to anyone new. We didn't like strangers.
Interesting.
So we were sent to drama classes to try and help us socialize. And it worked to a degree. But then we actually got sent to boarding school because we needed to continue that experiment, building confidence and socializing. We don't really come from a particularly, not traditionally creative in the performance sense family. As far as I'm aware, we don't have, singers and actors and whatnot in our whakapapa, in our genealogy, but there's creativity in other ways. So my mum made stained glass windows for a while.
Wow. And
she did a lot of like wood trimming work for one of our old house, and she sort of decorated the house that way. So there's definitely creativity. And my dad's a plasterer, and he used to do fibrous plastering. So all of those beautiful sort of decals you'd find around lights in ceilings, that sort of decorative plaster work, he did a lot of that. So there is creativity flowing through our family, just in different ways.
You mentioned last night one of your sisters is a sign language interpreter and is starting to work in theatre, is that right?
Yes. So she actually has a theatre degree. We did drama at high school together. She came to NIDS.
As a student?
As a student.
Oh, no way.
As a student, yeah. So
Small
I went
world.
1 year and then she came with me the second year. And she decided to study theatre and film, got a degree, and then following that became a sign language interpreter. And she's beautifully married the two of them together and interprets a lot of theatre, which is very cool.
That's very cool. Going back to The Gone,
yes,
I realised something watching it last night, and you can correct me in a second if I'm wrong and I'll chop this out.
I will if you are.
One of the themes with family is showing some parallels between families in New Zealand and families in Ireland. And am I right in thinking you have a great-great-grandmother that was from Ireland?
Yes, from County Carlow.
Did that make filming of The Gone that bit more close to home for you, or did that play any part of it?
Yeah, I think so. I've always known about my Irish whakapapa, so the fact that I go back to Ireland through my maternal great-grandmother, and my name, Acushla-Tara, Irish as anything. So when I found out that it was an Irish co-production, because it wasn't always going to be Ireland, it was going to be Germany, I believe, originally. I think it was German tourists that went missing in like very, very, very early drafts. And then I think everyone kind of realized the parallels between New Zealand and Ireland and thought, actually, this is a really good fit. And so just having that sort of Irish history and Irish blood just made it feel it made it feel very right. There's a saying in Te Reo Māori, you'd say he tohu tēnā or he tohu tēnei, which means like that's a sign. And it definitely felt that way when the audition came up, that I was auditioning for a Māori woman who was going to be interacting with the Irish. And as someone who is Māori and Irish, I was like, oh, he tohu tēnei, like this is a sign for sure, for sure.
Those moments can be quite rare when, as an actor, you're throwing yourself into lots of different guises, and then when one really hits home, that's
it
quite a
just
special
feels
moment.
right. Feels right in here. Yeah.
You've done season 1 now.
Yes.
Is there a likelihood of it going into season 2 or beyond?
That's what we're hoping. That's the plan. As far as I'm aware, we're hoping for that to happen. But as with any sort of art form, whether it be, theatre, TV, film, it always comes down to like the money and funding and all of that kind of thing. So I think, as far as I'm aware, we're just waiting for some sort of puzzle pieces to fall into place. Nothing's ever guaranteed. It's definitely been written. For anyone who's seen it, you'll know.
You should see it as well.
It has been written to have a sequel, to have a subsequent season, but nothing promised yet. No green light yet. But my fingers are crossed. Yeah.
You spent nearly 4 years in the UK.
I did.
Two-folded question.
Yes.
Firstly, what brought you over there? And secondly, what was your creative experience like in the UK versus New Zealand?
Great questions. What took me over there? Love, my friend, love. I am engaged to a lovely Englishman who was feeling the call of home, and I'd never lived overseas, and I thought, yeah, why not? Let's give it a go. It was really lovely when he knew that he needed to go home for a period of time. We'd not long been together, so he was like, if you want to come, that would be amazing, but there's no pressure there. One thing we're great at is communicating, and I felt very free to make the choice I needed to make, and that was eventually the choice of I will come with you. And so went over, and again, like through my maternal grandmother. So her mother was Irish. Mm-hmm. She was raised in England.
Oh, okay.
So there's a connection there. She used to work at Harrods, spent a lot of time in, wasn't raised in London, but spent a lot of time in London, which is where we ended up basing ourselves. So it was quite nice to sort of follow in the footsteps of my grandmother, who when I first moved over was still with us, and she was very excited that one of her grandchildren was going to where she spent so much of her adult life, really, before moving to New Zealand. So that's what took me there. And then my creative experience in comparison to my time in New Zealand at the time I left felt very different to what it is now. So when it came to characters that I was appropriate to audition for, not as abundant as they feel now. So I wasn't auditioning a lot. Theatre, different story. I'm sort of speaking more to screen now. Theatre was a different story because I think you can suspend your disbelief a lot more in theatre. So, I played Catherine in A View from the Bridge. Irish American? No, of course not. But everyone's like, sure. Sure. So yeah, theatre was a different story. But when it came to screen work, at the time it felt like in Wellington, where I was based before moving, it didn't feel like there were too many young Māori women being written into television and film and screen jobs. So I was either getting the roles that were nondescript, or, I'd audition, not get the role and be like, cool, now I've got to wait for a while for something appropriate to come up. Now it feels very different. The comparison to my time in the UK is that a lot, I think, and this is just me musing here, I think because the UK and specifically London is such a salad bowl of cultures and ethnicities, and so many different parts of the world have kind of congregated there and also developed there into new things. A lot of roles were being written that were not necessarily speaking to a particular experience or a particular ethnicity or culture or anything. And so you could then, the casting process would happen and then they would develop around you, those characters. So I played a lot of roles that ended up being Māori because I was Māori, not because they were written to be Māori. They were written to be nondescript. And I think we're doing a bit more of that here, but I really enjoyed that part of the London creative experience, that I got to audition for so many wonderful, wild characters who had particular life experiences and then bring my own flavor to them. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
It absolutely does. It really does.
Great.
And from that, when you travel, you always bring a part of home with you. And for me, throughout life, home can be lots of different things. It can be people, home can be an environment, home can be an experience, home can be a siren. Home.
Someone's in trouble.
Is it us? Home can be music. It can be loads of different things. Right now, for you, what is home?
Oh, that's a good question. I think right now I find my home to be te ao Māori, so the Māori world. I'm feeling really drawn to and comfortable in and safe in a way that I haven't always been. And home is where my love is, where my man is. So, yeah. I guess te ao Māori is cheating because it kind of encompasses all things Māori. So, whānau, family, whakapapa, my history, my tupuna, my ancestors that have come before me. I feel like if I've got them, and I always have them, then I'm home. Yeah.
I love that. And I like as well that those are things that can travel with you.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be a physical place or an environment. It can be something that you bring into your work or wherever you are in the world.
Yeah.
Let me loop it back round to what you first said about when somebody speaks to you, like the Uber driver, about your job and your career. And they often say, what have I seen you in? Most people that are voyeurs to your job and they watch from the sidelines associate success with fame.
Yeah.
Rather than the quality of the work or the
satisfaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What's your outlook, particularly as you're being, I imagine, recognised a lot more with things like the Gone? What's your outlook on the correlation between fame or stardom and creating art?
I think they are heavily connected in people's minds, but I don't think they should be. Fame is such a weird thing now, especially with the likes of social media. And you can get fame in so many different industries and facets of life. Of course you can. Fame does not equal creativity. Creativity does not equal fame. I think of the two, I would absolutely value creativity over fame any day. I think that what you said, the satisfaction and joy you can get from your own work and from consuming other people's work is much more fulfilling than this notion of celebrity or stardom. In saying that, I also completely fully acknowledge that fame and stardom and celebrity can lead to further work, can get work made. You know, you have the whole star system. If you're looking to fund a local New Zealand production, it's a lot easier to do so when you get an American name attached, you know? So I think it's ignorant to think that fame and stardom and celebrity doesn't hold a genuine importance, because it does. I think we just need to be wary of those concepts, because they can, as we've seen time and time again, lead down some pretty dark paths. And if you start, getting in your head about ego and forget why we got into this in the first place, you can, you'll never find satisfaction if you're doing it for fame, I don't think.
I feel that answer is so important to be heard, because it's very easy to say, let's just ignore fame. It's a dirty thing. But actually, acknowledging it's there. It is linked, whether we like it or not, but it also has a weighting to it that can have influence over things like funding, which is increasingly hard all around the world for lots of things.
It can be used for good.
It can be.
It can be used for good. I think it should be. It's not inherently evil. I don't think many things in this world are, but it's just something you've got to be careful with, I think. My favorite thing is when I'm out and about and someone will be like, I know your face. How do I know your face? Are you famous? And that one question, are you famous? I'm like, well, if you don't know who I am, then obviously not.
Like, not famous enough.
But yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
That one always makes me giggle on the inside when someone says those exact words, are you famous? Okay, A, define it for starters. Yeah. And B, if you're asking me, then no. And that's fine.
Yeah, totally. If you were to be speaking to younger people, or not necessarily younger, but people on their way into the industry, perhaps they're studying screen acting, what would be your advice to them around that topic? Because, you know, social media pushes that hard, other people push that hard. So what would your advice be to them?
I think my main sort of bit of advice to anyone working in a creative pursuit is the art should always come first. And byproducts will always come. I feel like fame is a byproduct of good art. It's also a byproduct of bad art, but ideally it's the good art.
Yeah.
What are the words I'm looking for? When it comes to finding satisfaction in your own work, you really need to find that within yourself, because art is so subjective. If you're looking for outside validation, that can be a really dangerous game to play. And I've seen people who are incredibly good at their jobs sort of fall victim to outside validation, and the integrity and the unique thing that makes their art special disappears because they're trying to please the masses. But the thing that made them so unique and special and made their art so delicious to consume was the fact that it started in here first. So I would say be aware of status and fame, and use it for good when you can. You know, you do see people using their reputation and their names for really noble, worthy causes, but that should never be the goal. I think that's, if I could boil it down to one thing, fame should never be the goal. It might be a byproduct of your work, but it should never be the thing you strive towards. If you want to be an actor, because I don't think you'll do good work if you're like, I just want to be famous.
I'm in total agreement with that. Also, the point that you brought up there about pleasing the masses. Had a really good conversation with a drag artist in the UK a few weeks back, and it's not a few weeks back at all. I released it a few weeks back. It was about 6 months ago for those of you that actually know. About when they were shaping their drag persona. Initially, they were trying to please the masses. They alluded to it. It got slightly away from them what they wanted, and then it went back into leaning into why they actually did it, what they want to say, and what's the function of that persona. That's a much happier place and a much more successful place in lots of different ways. It's really important.
Yeah.
The last third, talking of triplets,
yes,
is all to do with arts and well-being and mental health. And the first question I'm going to ask you is, do you associate your self-worth or happiness with frequency of work that you do?
Great question. I wouldn't say I associate it with, but I would say they are inherently, intrinsically linked. When I'm working, I am happier. It's just a fact. I'm doing what I love. I'm socializing with people that have a common ground of understanding. I am always happier when I work. I wish it wasn't the case that I was happiest when I was working, because that's not always in my control. So when I find myself not working for a period of time, I can definitely feel myself and find myself losing joy and experiencing more sort of boredom that can lead into sadness, that can lead into sort of depressive states, or periods of time. And the frustrating thing is that, I don't necessarily have control over my frequency of work.
I'm going to replace the word frequency with quality.
Mm-hmm.
Do you associate your happiness with the quality of work that you're involved with at the time? Because I totally agree. I am most content and fulfilled when I'm working. And sometimes, unfortunately, the busyness in that kind of grind culture nature can override my finger on the pulse with the quality of what that is as well.
Yeah. I don't think the quality, I'm prouder of myself when I see the work I'm doing as good quality. Again, subjective. Some people might not agree, but when I feel like it's good quality work, then I feel more sort of pride and satisfaction. But when it comes to happiness, I could be working on just the worst show. But if I'm having a good time with good people, I think for me it's the people more so than the quality of the work. If the people are cool, I could be doing the worst show that's ever existed and I'd still be happy. Yeah.
It's so true.
It's the people every time.
It's so true. And that actually is across life, isn't it? You could be on a plane journey and it doesn't really matter how quick you get there. If the people are good, you're all good.
Absolutely.
Would you say you're happy now?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think A, great company, B, literally sitting in the sunshine, feeling the sun on my skin.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Such a lovely feeling. And I'm in a t-shirt. Like,
yeah.
It's been a weird winter. We've had flooding. It's been freezing
Yes.
at times. And so how can I not be where I can see the ocean out behind us now? I can feel the sun on my skin. I've got coffee in my belly. Spent the morning rehearsing. I'm very happy.
And if I contrast that to the first time we met, it was an e-meet on Zoom, and it had just been the floodings here.
Yeah.
And you're a much happier state than around then.
Yeah.
And it's part of the reason why I'm traveling right now is that the UK doesn't always provide the nicest of weathers. But there's more to it than that. But yeah, that's so interesting. Couple more bits. Which one am I going to go to next? Okay, I want you to imagine something.
Yo, just a quick one from me. I'm currently travelling across New Zealand, and one thing that I bring with me every single day to keep myself safe is my NordVPN. And you too can stay safe by following my link in the description below. If you're not too sure what a VPN is, a VPN essentially allows you to be James Bond online. Stay undercover and stay safe. There are literally millions of ways for people to steal your details online and use them for their own benefit, and we don't want that. If you use my link, not only does it massively help out the podcast, but it gives you up to 68% off a 2-year subscription with 3 months extra free. Stay safe online, use NordVPN, on with the podcast.
Which one am I going to go to next? Okay, I want you to imagine something. Over the next 10 years, you make 10 films. Imagine that. And before 5 of them are released, 50% is cut and never sees the light of day. Would that upset you? Or would you be okay knowing that you've made the work, you've been around the people, doesn't really matter if it sees the light of day?
I think I have probably too much faith in the right decisions being made by the right people for the work. So if that 50% had to go for the work to be what the sort of key players wanted it to be and was aiming for it to be, then I completely surrendered to that. I had fun making it, hopefully, fingers crossed. I don't think I'd be mad. I think, if I had a really great monologue that I thought I did really good work in and no one ever saw it, I think I'd be a bit gutted, but I'd be stoked that through the process of doing that monologue, man, that sounds so convoluted, but true. The process of doing the monologue, I'm like, yeah, I'm a better performer now because of that. And so hopefully I can bring that to something in the future. I'm not really too precious about, especially in screen, about things getting cut. If it needs to go, it needs to go.
The reason I ask is...
You're hiring me in a series of 10 films!
But 5 are definitely going to be cut. You don't know which ones they're going to be. That would make people work hard. Oh, would it? I don't know. The reason I ask is that your first film appearance on Fresh Meat,
Yes.
you had 50% of your 2 lines cut.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel at the time? Did it bother you?
I think at the time, like if I'm being honest, I think at the time it did, because it was like the first time I'd ever done a film. And saying that, I had 2 lines and they were not integral to the story. I think you could have cut my character and no one would be any the wiser. It wouldn't change the structure of the film at all. So I think just like my youth made me feel a little bit stink about having one of those lines cut. But looking back now, I honestly don't mind at all. Not even a little bit.
I wonder how much as well experiences like that along our journey shape us to have a better, healthier perspective on it, because I'm sort of gearing that question up for potentially some of the younger listeners when they are being frustrated in their environments, whether they are at school or drama school or wherever. When things happen, you don't often know if it's going to be better for the long term anyway. And a bit like what you said, lending your trust into the people that are making those big decisions is an important thing to be able to do. Yeah.
I think just riffing off that sort of commentary, and this is only really something you can start to do once you've sort of been playing the game for a little bit longer, is looking back, I think, is so important, because there are those opportunities. Like Fresh Meat, I think, is a great one. Fresh Meat, I auditioned for a much larger role in that film, and I got given the role of Kitty, and I had 1 line. And at the time I was gutted. It was the first time I'd sort of auditioned for a lead in anything, and I was absolutely gutted. And then the director of that film hired me in my first professional theatre show. Would you only sort of see that connection looking back? And then from that theatre show sprung most of my career. At the time, it was gutting that I didn't get that role, but I then got my first professional theatre show, and everything kind of snowballed from there. I think retrospection, looking back and seeing if you can find those connections, because that's one of many, many connections that I can go and go, I didn't get that role, and that meant I could therefore do this role. Or even, it might not even have anything to do with like career. I auditioned for a supporting lead in a TV show. I didn't get it, gutted. And then the time that was filming, we had a really hard time in my family, and I could not have been with them during that time if I was away filming. And so, yeah, you never know why things are going to happen. And maybe it's, a bit of naivety thinking that I didn't get that role so I could be with my family. And whether or not that was like causation, correlation, whatever it was, the fact that it happened that way, whether fate had anything to do with it, makes those no's easier to think that it's a no, so something in the future can come to fruition. Yeah.
And you never really know if something is a positive thing. It can feel better or worse for sure. But you, again, a bit like allowing that time when you didn't get that role and it allowed the time for you to be there for your family. You didn't necessarily know that was going to be a time that you needed to be there for your family. And you just essentially never know really what is coming. And I think the best thing is just to be open and accept opportunities and connections with people where possible.
Yeah. And on a very like base level, you can only do as much as you can. If you have an audition, go do the best you can. I always tend to look at auditions like the performance. Anything past that point is extra. Get the job, that's additional. You have very little control, which I think if you can gear your mind to accepting that, can be really freeing sometimes. And also half the no's are because you're 2 centimeters too tall. Like really dumb things, or like they really want a blonde, whatever it is. Like you can almost. I also work in casting, so You'll see someone come in and, 90% of the people you see for a role absolutely can play that role. And then casting directors and producers get together and try and fit the puzzle pieces together. So when you get the no's, it doesn't mean you're a bad actor. It doesn't mean you're a bad performer. More often than not, it's just a different puzzle piece needed for that particular project.
It's that whole thing of don't worry about the things you can't control.
Exactly.
And within that world, there are so many things you can't control.
Exactly.
I brought my book out. This is my lovely Dingbats notebook. And if you would like 10% off, you can use the code Jamie10 at checkout. This is my guest book. And I take a Polaroid and ask each of my guests to forward questions to future guests.
Oh!
And I have lots of wonderful questions. I might ask you a couple.
Yeah, please.
The first one I'm going to ask you is from Dante Kennedy, and he is the musical director at Quincy Jones's bar in Dubai.
Oh, very cool.
He's amazing, amazing drummer, amazing guy. And his question is, while analysing the creative process per character and becoming who the character is it hard to come out of the character back into who you are, or does fragments of being someone or something else stay saturated in your being?
Option B. I think I carry a little, whether it's a grain of sand or a full stained glass window of each character I've ever played. And often following a project, mannerisms of a character will stay with me for a little while, and sometimes they stay with me for years.
Really?
Yeah. Whether it's the way someone speaks or even like the fashion sense of that particular character. I remember doing A View from the Bridge, and then I loved like that sort of high-waisted skirt heel look for a while.
Do you wear a police jacket just for fun now?
Yeah, it's actually, I've got it tattooed on my skin underneath this t-shirt.
Oh,
it's a
I could
full
see it.
police
Yeah.
jacket. No, but like the small thing of Diana, she always had her hair in a ponytail, and I tend to wear my hair more in a ponytail than I did prior to playing her.
Interesting.
Yeah. I first noticed it when I did a show called Sick in Wellington. It was the first show I ever did in Wellington. And I played a character called Teresa, but she went by T. And she'd always say, like, use terms like bro when talking about like friends. She'd be like, oh, what up, bro?
Yeah,
like things like that. It had never been part of my vernacular, but following that absolutely was something I said for years following that.
I didn't know you during that time, but
No.
never mind, bro. The next one is from Jay, who is the drag artist I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
What is your biggest fear?
Living to regret anything. Off the top of my head. I'm sure if I really thought for a long time, I could find something else. I think my biggest fear is regret, for sure. Just making choices based not on what I want / think is right. My biggest fear would be dying with a whole bunch of regrets in my pocket.
Same, I think. Yeah. Last question I'm going to ask you is from Kelsey. From Kelsey.
Aww.
And she wrote a few, but this one's really, really good. She asks, do you think you celebrate your achievements enough, and what are you most proud of?
I absolutely celebrate my achievements. I think because it's such a hard industry, it was a practice I started very, very early on. Originally, I'd buy a really nice bottle of wine, or it would be like my favorite bottle of beer, and I would keep that and I'd attribute a goal to that bottle. And when I got it, I got to drink it. And so always like really marking those moments of moments I deem to be success at that point in time. And in addition to that, when I did a job, I'd always do something or buy myself something. I'd always mark it somehow. So one of my first theatre jobs, I bought myself a watch. It was a watch that I loved, and I was like, I'm gonna do this. And then most recently, I spent a significant amount of money on the most beautiful blanket by a company called Noah. They are lamb's wool, grown, made, designed, everything here in Auckland in Tāmaki Makaurau. and it smells like farm. So I was raised going to my papa's farm all the time, so that even just the smell of it is so nostalgic and wonderful. And that's sort of made to order, a very much a luxurious purchase that Kush of days gone by would not spend that much on a blanket, but it was absolutely worth it. It's stunning, absolutely gorgeous. And that was because I'd forgotten for a number of projects. I was so fortunate to just have job after job after job for like maybe 18 months. It just kind of just went bonkers for a while there. And because I was just jumping around so much, I forgot to mark each of those moments. So that blanket for me is the celebration of the Gone, Te Pāmu Kumara season 2, Les Mills, yeah. I always get Les Mills, the gym, and Les Mis, the musical.
I was wondering which.
My brain just sometimes just fritzes like it did just then. So I did an ad for Les Mills.
Oh, cool.
Which was
Not for Les Mis.
Not for Les Mis, not this time. But it was like several, and then Prima Facie, a theatre show that I did.
Yes.
This blanket is kind of the past sort of year and a half. I think anyone, regardless of what industry you work in, I think you should celebrate things you deem to be wins. The key is figuring out what those wins are before they happen. What do I want to achieve? Work towards that thing, and then celebrate the hard work you've put in to get there. And then the second part of that question, what am I most proud of? That's a hard one, and will completely change depending on what day you ask me. I think currently, in this moment, the thing I'm most proud of would be my loyalty, whether that is to a person, to a group of people, or to my work. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And yeah, no, I'm a fiercely loyal person, and I'm very proud of that fact.
It's a brilliant quality to have, and it's actually similar to something we mentioned earlier today. I find a decreasing quality in people in general because of this download generation thing of, even if it's not within them wanting to not be loyal, sometimes the shinier thing takes over, whether that be a group of friends, whether that be a partner, whether that be that gig or that work is better or gives you more fame or money, whatever it is. And there's an urgency about it. And I feel that loyalty is actually something, maybe it's seeping away, maybe it's just the people I've been surrounded with recently, I don't know, but that is a brilliant quality, and I like that that's something you're super proud of.
Yeah, and no, I would agree with you as well. Like, I've had some hard decisions in the past where I've said yes, say, to a particular project, and then sort of the shinier project, for whether it's because of the work or the pay, has come up, but I'm already said I'm going to do this other thing, and I've stuck to that decision because I don't want to let these people down. I mean, I flippin' said no to dinner with Scarlett Johansson because I'd promised my mate I'd babysit for him. Like, that's the level of loyalty I'm talking about. But, you know, this mate hadn't gone out on a date with their wife in a number of years. And I was like, no, of course I told you I'd look after your girls. Of course I'll look after your girls.
You're a good person.
And then I've had people be like, what is wrong with you? Why didn't you drop that gig to do that gig? Why didn't you, you'll be paid so much more. The credit's so much better, whatever it is. Because I told people I would do this, and I'm a woman of my word. In saying that, I'm also fiercely loyal to myself and my own integrity. So if a job, if a situation, any life situation comes up, and I find that it's not working for me for whatever reason, and it has to be a pretty good reason, I will gracefully bow out of a job if it's not working. Very, very rare, and it takes a lot for me to quit anything. But I'm also very open to quitting if needs must.
Going back to how you celebrate, I adore that you have physical wins or physical celebrations, whether it be a bottle of wine or
A really expensive blanket.
there you go, all those things. And my friend back in the UK, she's a country artist. She's called Demi. She encouraged me to do exactly that earlier this year. She bought me this little bottle of wine and wrote on a little bottle for big wins. And then I wrote down a bunch of goals, and I would have a sip of it when I've achieved said goal. One of the goals was actually to get over here. I didn't bring the bottle, but I'll have a glass on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just it's really important. And pride is a funny one. Pride can be seen as a
Positive or a negative.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, depending on how you view it. But I just think having that that inner feeling of being proud about something that you've achieved is just so important to acknowledge. Otherwise, you're constantly going to the next thing, going to the next shiny thing. You know, it's that loyalty. It's linked really closely.
And acknowledge and relish, like really feel the joy that moment of winning gives you, because it is so flippin' hard in there's so many different industries to get where we want to be. And like you said, if we're just next thing, we forget that, like, okay, the job I'm doing now that is really hard and I'm kind of dragging my feet to every day, early call times, whatever it is. 2 years ago, Kush would have died to be in this position, would have done anything, would have given up anything to be in this position. And so, like, really enjoying those moments and reminding yourself to go, this is something I really wanted. This is a goal I really worked towards. I think it would also kind of help keep you in balance. Because if you're doing that, you're celebrating those wins and you're acknowledging your self-proclaimed successes or whatever it is, when it starts to not feel like that, you can interrogate that and go, am I still on the right path? Yes or no? And make sure that you are still doing what you want to do, because we're all changing as people. And sometimes, I want to be an actor now. Currently, I can see myself doing it for the rest of my life. I'm also very open to that changing, because people change. So if I start to find myself not celebrating those wins and starting to feel unhappy or sort of negative when I'm going to work, okay, I'm going to interrogate that. Is it because I'm tired, or is it because I'm changing and I want to do something different with my life? And just being really open to that.
Yet another amazingly healthy outlook on part of life. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
And I'm really excited to see everything you do, but also I think more people need to have bits of Kush's outlook on life. So I'm so glad you were able to share these thoughts and perspectives on the world, because they're really good and they're really healthy. Thank you for being you.
Thank you. Can I leave with one last saying?
Please do.
It's called a whakatauki in te reo Māori, so like a proverb, and something that guides me whenever I'm unsure. E hara taku toa I te toa takitahi, engari he toa taki tini. My successes are not mine alone, but the success of everyone who has been with me to get to this point.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. If you're still listening at home, thank you so much. Wherever you are in the world, remember to create with people, connect with people, but most importantly, be exactly you. Until the next time, peace. Woo! Hey!
Yay!
Woo! Smashed it. Thank you.
A lovely conversation. That was great.
Lovely conversation, lovely place. Thank you, mate. Hey, that was perfect. Oh, I feel very lovely inside.
Me too. I feel like a little dopey from the sun in the best way.